my page. We got, let's see, we got going on here. It says, started yet. We're getting there. Hey, good morning. Say Lara. Say Lara. So it should come up fairly quickly here as everything begins to transition, go from one platform to another. I'm going to get over on YouTube because I am doing the YouTube stream today as well, just so that you guys can begin to get into the migration process. The great diaspora is happening. So let's see. We should be getting a... There we go. All right. It is happening. It is happening. All right, so let me just do this. Beautiful. It's going on. We are live. Everything's getting linked up. This is great. 21st century all the way. Let me just adjust this a little bit. I have to adjust my screenage. Let's make sure we're all together. Yeah, looks good. Hey, what's happening out there? Sorry for the delay. It's been a very long weekend. Started off on Saturday morning with the webinar, the Mars webinar, which was, I thought, really good. Went off without a hitch, and 3 hours of action-packed information on Mars, from Mars as a mythical character, god in the Roman pantheon, cross-cultural references to Mars, the secret history of Mars, cultural images of Mars, and of course Mars in the astrological chart. It's all there. 3 hours worth of Marsification. Now that webinar is going to be for sale, and I'm going to be selling it for $30, and I believe I'll have that over on Payloads, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, it'll all be delivered, served up, and you'll be able to purchase that webinar. If you did not attend the webinar, it's all good. It's all good. Let me just check in on YouTube. Yes, we got YouTube action. Good to see what's happening in the chat room. There's the chatters, the chatty chatters. What's happening, chatters? Chatlandia. Good to see you this morning. Again, apologize for running a bit behind. It's been a very long weekend. So I started off on Saturday morning and did the webinar, and then I jetted off to Austin, where I did live astrological readings for, let's see, from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock for 3 hours. And then I did readings yesterday for another 5 hours. So I did 8 hours worth of readings on top of the webinar. And these were like bangity, 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 bang readings. It was kind of a trip, you know. I just decided to get out and do something different and kind of meet the masses and see what's going on astrologically on a kind of a very public level. And first of all, the rumor is true. There is a great deal of interest in astrology amongst young people. It is probably one of the largest growing kind of vectors or waves of interest in young people. And I probably wouldn't be too far off if I said this, but the way things are going, it feels like astrology is positioned or being positioned as the new religion. That astrology is being positioned as the new organizing principle. It's very interesting to watch. And, you know, I think astrology is a great tool. It's how I make my living. I enjoy helping people. And it is a system that has a great deal of variance. You know, it's built on polarity and duality. And it can be influenced in a lot of different ways. Every astrologer has kind of their own take, right? It's not like, you know, when you get into a canon, you know, real canon like the Bible or the Quran, you know, there are do's and don'ts. There are finite applications to that work. And in astrology, it's not that finite. There are some finite applications, right? We know that that Mars rules Aries, right? I mean, that's a finite application. We can define it as such. But who is practicing astrology and how it's being presented and used is a whole different thing, because there are astrologers who are, incredibly woo. You got the woo gang with astrology. Then there are astrologers who are kind of very humanistic. Then you have astrologers who are ancient and Hellenistic. Then you have astrologers who are, quite frankly, they're satanic astrologers. There are people that use astrology for very deep occult purposes. Then there's my kind of version, which I use as a tool of awakening and navigation, right? But not everybody's like that. So there's going to be a great deal of interpretation and variance when it comes to astrology. But I'm telling you right now, the popularity for astrology is off the charts. So I did this event at a place called Elm, which is a kind of a fancy, modern, urban furniture place, and it was in Austin, and this was for South by Southwest. Okay, now the majority of South by Southwest is kind of happening in and around like the 5th Street area, where there's a lot of clubs and a lot of music and showcases. But what was once a music showcase, and it was a very sleepy kind of affair. I know the guys who started South by Southwest, and it was originally kind of a place where, at an event where journalists who were in places like New York and Boston and Philadelphia and Chicago, they could go to Austin during March or late February, early March, depending upon what time they were launching South by Southwest, and they could get some sunshine, some cheap food, listen to a bunch of bands, and it was kind of this kind of cool little underground thing, just like Austin was a cool little underground city. Well, that's changed. And then, I've seen the evolution of South by Southwest, and when I was working in the music industry on a professional level, this was around 2007, 2008, that version, because I had a couple different runs, and this was that run, right? And it was really when tech started to get into South by Southwest, tech and movies, and it was no longer just a music event. And that's also when products were being introduced, right? So you had all these advertisers who were thinking, holy smokes, man, we got all these people, we've captured their attention, they're in an inebriated or altered state for the most part, and we can slip into their subconscious by promoting our products, either directly or indirectly. And that became a huge push for South by Southwest. And now, if you go back last year, there was the mayor of London, who, by the way, you don't really hear that much of at this point. Remember last year, that mayor of London was a real buzz. He was a buzzkill, and he came to Austin, basically saying, "Hey, look, we're tired of Americans dictating, the morals, the mores, and the codes of the internet. We hate hate. We don't tolerate bigotry." And he came to this country, and basically addressed an audience and said, Take your version of the internet and stick it up your ass, because we don't like it, right? So now we had politics being inserted into South by Southwest. So it's become this massive kind of cultural incubator and accelerator that happens over a brief period of time. Now, of course, these phony, fake Hollywood stars and starlets, they show up, and they're promoting whatever they're promoting. Whether it's the agenda that they're being told to promote, or a film that they're working on, or fill in the blank. Okay, so what once started off as kind of this sleepy little kind of backdoor event, which was strictly for the music industry, back when people bought CDs. Remember that time? Oh yeah, what a quaint period that was. That's when South by Southwest got its wings, and now it's turned into a dragon, a massive dragon, right? It got its wings, and now it's this entity. And it is advertised everywhere now. Okay, so keep in mind, this is in Austin. And Austin, from what I can piece together, has become the model franchise for the Agenda 21 city. And I got a really up close and personal view of that. And I know where they're going with Agenda 21 and these cities. And I'm going to talk about it in a second. But I want to finish up the astrology stuff. So I did a ton of readings for people, and when I got there, what is it, West Elm? I think it's called West Elm, right? So when I got there, there was a line of people just waiting. You would think that there was, like, you know, somebody famous. I'm not famous. Nobody who walked through that door knew who I was. Okay, nobody walked through and said, "Hey, aren't you Robert Phoenix?" No, that didn't happen. I was just a guy doing astrology readings, and there was another guy. So we were just, you know, theoretically just regular folk doing astrology readings. And there was a line, a really long line to get in and have people have their charts read in these very brief meetings. I was working with a company called Sanctuary, and they're developing an app, and they're doing these very short mini readings. I'm telling you this because not because I want to push this company, although the guy who was, you know, running the company was very cool to me, right? It was a cool thing. But I'm just giving you an idea and an example as to the penetration of the system into the market. And so what they're going to be marketing are very brief, like 10 to 15 minute readings with people through an app. Okay, so this is we're looking at the widespread application of astrology, and this was a company that's got its, you know, toe in the water, and I'm sure it won't be the only one. I'm sure there's others, and I know there are others that have apps out there. This is the future. It's going to be prophecy via cell phone. Okay, now the challenge with that is that you don't know who you're going to get. You don't know where their, you know, expertise lies or where their agendas are. So, you know, caveat emptor, buyer beware. This goes for anything or anyone that you're working with. You don't know who you're going to connect with. You don't know whether or not they're going to be responsible. They're going to be sharp. They're going to be, how do I say this, clear, have a sense of real consciousness and connection to divinity, right? I mean, you don't know that. So that's going to be, I think it's interesting. I don't know, should astrology be regulated? I don't know. It's an interesting question. You know, a lot of astrologers make as much as people who have master's degrees and to some extent even PhDs, and they practice modern psychotherapy. It's true, and there's a great deal of regulation theoretically that goes into modern psychotherapy or psychiatry, and, you know, I'm not even sure, you know, if that is a good thing per se, right? Anyway. So let me just check in with the chat room as I begin to transition to today's topic. I'm going to cover a couple different things today. Today's topic, I'm going to talk about the Michael Jackson thing just a little bit, because I want to cover the Michael Jackson piece, but I want to do it in a way where I'm not just like throwing stuff against the wall, because I know some things about Michael Jackson, and I'm going to present a different side or different angle or different view of, you know, what's happening and how this revisionist Mercury retrograde kind of experience is taking place, because that's exactly what it's doing. It's taking place. And we're in a Mercury retrograde. It's in Pisces. Michael was a Virgo, so we're getting into that kind of the wave. It's a tidal wave now, and you know, it's kind of like the wave is hit, right? And now it's pulling all the crap back away from, you know, the shore, and the pulling away is the historical. It is the historical retrieval of Michael Jackson and his influence. It's a revisionist, and I'm not here to protect Michael Jackson. I'm not. You'll see where I go with this, but I'm just sharing with you that what's happening with Michael Jackson is in some ways the same thing that has happened with the removal of the statues in the South of the Civil War era figures. Okay, we're in a phase in a cycle of revisionist history, and I'm telling you, Michael Jackson is a sacred cow. And he's a sacred cow because so many people loved Michael Jackson. You know, a lot of the millennials, a lot of the Gen Xers loved Michael Jackson. The Gen Xers grew up with Michael Jackson. You know, for them, he was their Elvis. Okay, so when you do that, and you take away this icon, this iconic kind of reference point for them, and even there are people that are like people are burning, that are removing his music. There's a reason for it. And it's about the revision of history. And if you can take down sacred cows and icons, you can take down just about anybody. And you can take away just about anything. So remember that. I'll talk more about that later, maybe tomorrow, if I can have the time to put together the show that I really want to put together on Michael Jackson. And we're going to look at some of the earthquakes. The earthquakes are sprouting up all over the place. So we'll do a quick earthquake check towards the end of the show. But I want to get into the meat of the stream today. Before I do, so let me check with you guys as I transition over to the next segment. What do we have? Oh, Colt says, great webinar. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So you could come on over if you want. The water's nice over on 15 Minutes of Flame. Let me check in with the chat room. Everybody's over there. There's Anna. There's Suze. Richard, a tool for self-transformation growth, but it's not the be-all and I agree, Richard. I've always said that about astrology, and so did Ptolemy. It is a good tool, but it is not everything. There's Burke and the Brew looking in fine form. There's Isla. Hey, Rhonda, what's happening? There's Beth Berry, Ani, and Brito. Kathy. Hi, Kathy. Nice to see you. And, hey, if you haven't checked out BB, check out her blog, man. BB does a great job on her blog. She's got such a great presence and a nice aesthetic kind of touch. Check out BB and BB's blog. It's good stuff. Hey, Shari, and there's Edgardo. Everybody's there and accounted for, and we've got the 15 Minutes of Flame crew over there chatting away. Hey, Alyssa. Good morning. What's happening? All right, cool. Let's get into this next piece here, which I think is, to me, it kind of blew my mind. And I figured out it's kind of a two-pronged thing that I figured out where all this is headed with Agenda 20, because Austin is the flagship city for Agenda 21. It fits so many different demographics. So when I was there, I was shocked. Again, every time I go back to Austin, it's like I'm walking on, because I couldn't believe how different of a place that I live in. Fredericksburg it's like a place from another time. It's not even like another city. It's like another time. I'm living in like the 1980s here, or the 1990s. It's really, really different. Way different than Austin. In Austin, I will say this. There's Fredericksburg may have more in common with a place like San Antonio, even though it's a big city, than Austin for a number of different reasons. But Austin has clearly got its footprint in the 21st century. So there I am. And I was shocked to find all these scooters, okay? Scooters everywhere. And they are scooters that are electric scooters. And you can use your phone to unlock the scooter, and you're paying for the scooter. This is what happens. And once you're done with the scooter, you either take it back to where you got it from, or you just leave it on a corner, right? Somebody come along and go, oh, okay, I'd like to do that. And I guess at some point, there are people who read the scooters and the scooter power, and they come and pick up the scooters and they recharge them and they deploy them again, okay? So there are powered scooters everywhere. Now, just to put this into context, when I was in my 30s, I was working at Mondo 2000, and we'd get products sent to us. And one of the products we got sent to us was there's a company called Zappy. And we got the Zappy Zappy scooter sent to us. We got the Zappy scooter, and we got a Zappy, and we got, I think the other one was it Huffy? There were two scooter companies. I know Zappy was one, or Zap was one. So we had two of them. We had these scooters sent to us. So we had electric scooters back in the 90s, and of course I was like, well, first of all, I wasn't as thick as I am. I was probably, back then I probably weighed about I don't know, maybe about 190. All right, now I think I'm around 225. So I was about 190, and I had a blast with these scooters. I used to scoot around Berkeley on this scooter, and I used to do stuff like jump curbs, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. Anyway, this is my extended adolescence. So these scooters now have been totally upgraded. I think the batteries last longer. They've been equipped with, they may even have like GPS on them or something. But I know for a fact that they have a device that allows you to basically use your phone. No money now. This is you're not going to a shop, because back in the day, if you wanted to go and rent a scooter, you would go to a shop, and you would employ employees at the shop and do all sorts of stuff, right? And there would be this retail transaction. That ain't happening. That's not happening. The shop is ubiquitous. The shop is everywhere. Just like Amazon, it's like the services in the cloud. So it's not just scooters, but it's also electric bikes. You can rent electric bikes. You don't even have to pedal. And then you're driving electrically with your bicycle. Okay, so these were everywhere. It was like a swarm of mosquitoes with these scooters. And I know it's South by Southwest, but I also know that scooters are there. And in fact, apparently, they've got the whole thing with lawyers, which is if you've been hit by a scooter, call so-and-so, right? So there's a whole kind of, new legal industry, which is basically dealing with scooter injuries, right? Okay, so I thought about this, like, what is going on here? What is it with these scooters? So I thought to myself, well, what they're doing is they're turning the city into an amusement park. And this is going to be sort of the nexus of Agenda 21 and the smart city. They're turning the city into Neverland. You see, because they're sacrificing Michael Jackson, revisionist history, and they're sacrificing Neverland. Why? Because there has to be a new Neverland. And that's going to be the modern American city where nobody ever grows up. And scooters are everywhere, right? And cool things are everywhere. This is going to be the nexus of Agenda 21. This is how they're going to get people, and especially young people, into wanting to be in these cities where everything is a complete control grid. But hey, you're having fun. And how many amusement parks have kids gone through and been amused and had fun? And now with amusement parks, wasn't so much before, but everything in an amusement park now is completely tracked. It's completely tracked. You got wristbands, and the wristbands have RFID signals on them. They're grabbing information all the time at amusement parks. Where you go, what you eat. I wouldn't be surprised if they're even tracking the level of your emotion, right? When you go through all these different experiences at amusement park, whether it's elation, excitement, frustration because the line is too long, anger if your child doesn't get the right color cotton candy, right? I think that they're grabbing all this biometric information constantly at amusement parks. So amusement parks, especially Disney, have become the entrainment centers for the new version of the American city. Think of Epcot. Why do you think Epcot exists? Epcot exists because Epcot becomes sort of this model, this kind of, so Epcot is like meat and potatoes, and Disney's dessert. And so you go to Epcot, and it's like really cool. Look at all these ideas. And then you go over to Disney, and you're, oh yeah, man, this is all fun. And you merge the two together, and you have Agenda 21. You have the new city. And that's what's happening. So the scooters are an enticement, right? It's like, hey, who needs a car? Scooters everywhere. Scooters, bicycles. Man, is this fun. If you look at the new commercials, like the Chobani commercial, which I've talked about, and the commercial where you've got this young gal who's got her phone. I think she's using an American Express app, and she's buying cupcakes and stuff for people, zappity, zappity, zap. And then you look at the surrounding area, there's no cars. There's no cars. People are walking around. It's sort of like, Disney on Parade. It's like the Main Street thing. And people are dribbling basketballs. And, oh, my God, it's so fun. It's so fun. Life is just one unending celebration where you zap this and you zap that. And you get this little treat and that little treat. And if you get bored, you ride on your scooter. right? This is how they're going to create the new city. This is the flagship for Agenda 21. It's going to be fun. And then you throw in sprinkle a little universal income dust to make sure that you have enough money so you can continue to have fun, but not too much fun, right? Because you can only have as much fun as the Wizard of Oz or the Wizard of Agenda or the Wizards of Agenda 21 will allow you. But you will be mostly fed by who knows what. You'll certainly be amused. You'll be entertained. And ultimately, you'll be anesthetized. Now, there's another component to this. And last night, I spent about 2 hours. Emily turned me on to this documentary. And it's this young guy named Matthew North. And he did a 2-hour expose on Joe Rogan. And he had a lot of good stuff. Some of the stuff that Emily and I have talked about. And he was really, the parts that I found really interesting were more at the beginning than sort of towards the middle end. And that's where he was linking Rogan up with Alex Jones and Eddie Bravo and Aubrey Marcus and the jiu-jitsu movement at a certain level, the MMA sort of level, and also with nootropics, smart drugs, and hallucinogenics. Now, we're seeing that there's a huge push to make marijuana legal. And Emily and I got into this thing about legalization versus decriminalization. I am all for being able to grow your plants. Okay? If you want to grow cannabis, grow it. You want to grow psilocybin, grow it. That's up to you, right? These are naturally occurring, entheogens in our system. You don't have to, right? You don't have to. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. It takes some effort, but if you want to do it, then you have a personal relationship with that thing, correct? Instead of having this kind of corporate control, which is really starting to take place now with cannabis. Okay, so there's a major push, and there's been a major push with cannabis for a long time. Now, I used to hang out with a guy in New York City, really, really great guy, Mark. And Mark worked for George Soros a long time ago. This is back in the 90s. Okay? He worked with Soros in the Open Society. Mark's an Aquarius, so it made a lot of sense. Great guy. Anyway, he was telling me back in the 90s that Soros was putting huge money around legalization. And to this day, he's continuing to put money. So when you look at the legalization efforts, that has a lot to do with the Soros family, and particularly George Soros. So we have legalization of cannabis. Well, guess what? The next legalization piece is going to be around psilocybin. And they're already talking about that in Oregon and Colorado, who were the flagship states to legalize cannabis. Okay? You see where this is going now. Because one of the pillars of the new city, or one of the pillars of the Agenda 21 world, will be psychedelics. It will be hallucinogens. It will be cannabis. So people will be living essentially in a Brave New World Agenda 21 experience. Now, I will say this, that everything will be controlled. So any kind of hallucinogen or psychedelic that a person partakes in will be controlled by the system. Okay? That's just the way it is. And when the system controls that thing, they can create that thing and design that thing specifically to what they want that thing to be, right? There's an inherent technology in anything. So I actually experienced this, and I don't know how or why this happened, and I'll give you a little slice of my personal life. Back in the 80s, I knew these guys, and they were essentially mushroom dealers, okay? And they always had a plentiful supply of mushrooms. But every time, and I'd taken, I had a few mushroom journeys in the past. When I consumed these mushrooms, I generally had bad trips. I don't know why. I don't know why I was having bad trips, because most of the time, these trips were wonderful. They were great. But in many cases, with this particular batch, I was experiencing like terror, right? And then I thought about this, like, why can't I have a really happy mushroom trip on this particular batch? And they were like really spectacular looking mushrooms, right? So back then I was thinking somebody's doing something to these mushrooms. They're either spraying them with something, or they're waving their hands over them and doing incantations, or hitting them with sound waves. I don't know what they were doing, but they were not really pleasant. They were kind of like, instead of going up the elevator, I was going down the elevator. And I think the few times that I did it, it was almost always the same experience, versus other experiences where it was like, me and nature and beauty and God, and this is going in the other direction. So in a very early kind of phase of my exploration, I began to see how these substances could be theoretically modified. So if you think you're just going to be getting like natural fill in the blank psilocybin or natural fill in the blank cannabis, you're wrong. You're wrong, because these substances, and we know this now about cannabis, it's been totally mutated. And so what people are ingesting now is very, very different than, say, 35, 40 years ago, and for a number of reasons. Hybridization, all kinds of stuff, right? So it's not just going to be sort of this natural kind of, because I'll tell you what's going to happen. Here's what these social engineers are understanding, is that at some point there's going to be generations that are going to die off, okay? So the baby boomers, even though the baby boomers were the first kind of, psychonauts, they're going to die off. People who are still, that live with Pluto in Cancer, are still on the planet. They are, and they're going to go. Right? They're going to go. So what will happen is that there's going to be a younger generation, and the younger generation, and they know this. This is the millennials and premillennials. They are more open to entheogens. They are. Pluto in Scorpio, Neptune in Capricorn, the Neptune-Uranus conjunction in their charts. So the social engineering is about ultimately getting in, because here's what used to happen. Okay, if you go back and listen or look at what the model for society was back in the 50s, 60s, and to some extent even in the 70s, 80s, it was about a certain kind of control. It was the control of conformity. And so what you would do is, in a very Saturnian model, is you graduate from high school, you go to college, you meet the right person, and you get a job, and you work, you'd have vacations, and maybe you'd have a divorce or two, or affair or two, or whatever. But that's what you did. And then you would retire, and then you would die. And that was the model of society. Why was that? It was because corporations and these quote-unquote oligarchs needed the workforce to do that. They needed a sober workforce for the most part. They needed a workforce that if there was going to be vice, it would be vice on the side and not vice up front. Okay? That model is changing. It's totally changing, because they know automation is coming in a big way, and they don't need the kind of workforce that they used to had to show up at work on time and get things done and be on point and on the ball. I mean, there's some of that still, don't get me wrong. But I'm talking about 15, 20 years from now. Okay, that's what they're planning for. Not now, where we have this overlap of these two kinds of versions of culture, which is still rooted slightly in the post-20th century, post-industrialized information age, where people still work to some degree. By the way, a lot of the people that I was doing readings for worked at home. They worked out of their homes. Okay, so what does that mean? It means you're eliminating having to go somewhere. You're eliminating this idea of even the suburbs, because people would live in the suburbs. This was the white flight from the cities, urban renewal from the 1970s and 80s, right? 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then you had industry set up around these suburban areas. That's going away, because people are working out of homes. They can work anywhere. So let's get them back into the cities, make cities an amusement park, and have them work at home. In the future, work is going to be Uh, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with work. I'll be honest with you. Because as automation comes online, they're going to need people to, you know, not live a whole lot, right? They're going to have a shared economy. Your place won't even be your place. You might share it with another person. Your clothes may not even be your clothes at all. You might share those as well. So ownership goes out the window. Well, you won't need a car because you have scooters, and you'll have electric bikes. You'll have universal income, and you'll have Soma. You know, whatever Soma is at that time. And I would assume that the version of Soma might be some new drug that ultimately will pass a number of trials and tests so that people will just take it. Just like Soma in Brave New World, just like Huxley laid out. You know, it might be some version of a synthesis of MDMA and the harmaline or DMT. You know, but light, so that people aren't tripped out all the time. But people are just kind of lightly hallucinated, psychedelicized. You know, let's see, it was about a couple of years ago, you know, this idea that people could microdose on LSD was becoming very, very popular. Like, you know, you wouldn't take a big trip, but just a little tiny trip. When you take a little tiny trip, what happens? You become sort of more awake, more aware, more acute, your acuity, your focus, everything expands. So microdosing became kind of a trend. I think it still is, right? So I think the future is ultimately about people living in a somewhat psychedelicized, lightly psychedelicized or hallucinogenic state. And there will be some kind of sacrament or some kind of somatic carrier where people will indulge in this and they'll stay at kind of this pitched level of consciousness. And then you're going to throw in things like VR and then the augmented reality, which will be part. And I'm telling you right now, the world is going to be a radically different place. Radically different. And this is going to be in the cities, and I saw it. I saw what was happening. And it's going to be based on an amusement park. And that's how they're going to get people to buy into it. It'll be fun. And people have been brought up with fun. And when you take fun away, people get really pissed off. You know, you take fun away, and people will throw a tantrum because all the chemicals, right? All the neuropeptides in the brain that don't line up with fun aren't there. People go nuts. It's like the same thing with a cell phone. Anyway, that's going to be one version of reality. And by the way, it coincides with, I always forget the guy's name. It's not it's Cameron, Duncan Cameron, okay? Duncan Cameron was one of the people who was on the USS Eldridge in the Philadelphia experiment. And he went into the far future. And if you can find his video, maybe I'll play some of it later this week. He talks about being in the city of the future. And it sounds just like the city that I just talked about, okay? And he says that these cities and this society, that it was set up by a group called the engineers. So this would coincide with Silicon Valley and people like Sergey Brin and Larry Page and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, that these guys are, and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, these are the progenitors of the new society or the new culture, and it's all coming out of that world. And it has been for a while. And this kid, Matthew North, gets into some of that in this 2-hour piece on Joe Rogan. But we can see that this has been happening for a while now. That they are shaping, crafting, and designing the new world that we're going to inhabit. So what we're looking at here is a new version of the founding fathers. They're going to be the founders of the new civilization. And this is the civilization going to exist on Earth, right? And so in order to have this, you have to eradicate the old one. And there's a sacrifice that will take place, just like there was a sacrifice that took place with Michael Jackson the Neverland, so that the modern city can become the new Neverland. The sacrifice is going to be historical and cultural Western civilization. That will be the sacrifice. And the sacrificial entity of that will be the Caucasian Anglo-Saxon race. That'll be the sacrifice, so that this new model can come into play. And this is why this is all taking place now. White people bad, white people bad, white people bad, white people bad. It's not that white people are bad, per se, right? That's not really what that's part of it. But what they're really trying to do is set this up so that there can be, for all intents and purposes, a cultural and maybe, so a culture side and maybe a genocide. I'll put an asterisk next to the genocide. So that can be wiped out and this new model can be put into place, okay? So we're looking at people like George Washington now. Watch out. Watch out. George Washington would be considered racist. He owned slaves, okay? So as a result of this, revisionist history, revisionist theory, those founders, those founding fathers, they're on the list. They're on the endangered species list, just like Michael Jackson. If you can eradicate an icon that so many people loved, adored, jammed to his music, if you can eradicate that, you can eradicate anything, okay? So the founding fathers are next because the new founders are living on the west coast of California. That's what's happening. So in order to create the new culture, you have to eradicate the old one, and that's what's taking place right now. Okay, so what will happen is that people are going to drop off, and they're going to some people are going to get out of the cities. And we can even see that to some extent on an economic level. Like companies want to leave New York because New York is getting way too expensive to do business in. Where are they coming? Right here, Texas, right? Which is good and bad, right? Because when they leave New York, they're bringing kind of New York values to Texas, just like when Californians, leave California, they come to Texas and they want to change shit, right? Oh, this place would be so great, but all we have to do is get rid of all those guns, just get rid of and Texas would be wonderful. It's like, this is the plight of this. This is what I hate about Californians for the most part, they decide that they want to just infect wherever they go with their so-called culture. This is what's happening, though. This is where it's going. All right, let me check in with you guys in the chats, see what your thoughts around all this. Here we go. Microdosing psilocybin is also a hot trend. Yep. Well, Joe Rogan did that. Joe Rogan just popped a little mushroom on one of his shows, right? Tavistock is neighbor to Disney World. Laugh out loud. There we go. Let's see. Wasn't there a Halloween? Hi, Gene. Halloween South Park episode about scooters that can only be used by smartphones. Character finders. Yes, I think there was. Shari says, I was heavily looking into Fredericksburg or Wimberley. Those are nice places. I love Wimberley. AOC just called Roosevelt racist. About that. You see what's happening? Revisionist. Ani says, different strains produce different trips. You took something that didn't agree with you. Produced a bad trip. I'm telling you, it was really bad. Not fun. Great Mars webinar. Going to make that available publicly. California. Ooh, Ian. Nice. Cali. K-A-L-I. Fornia. Why do you think Mexico shows as not being depopulated in Agenda 21 list of countries? Population. Exactly. They want that population. They want that breeding. They want the breeding. Breed. Breed it all. Breed it up. Right. Okay. Let me see what's going on over in the other world. Moving between worlds. We have the architect. What do we have here? The architect is re-engineering the Matrix again. Wingmakers, original version, classic Karl Marx. Wingmakers. Okay, so before I move on to the next topic of conversation, which is the earthquakes, we're going to look into that a little bit. I love Costco. I dig Costco for a lot of reasons. Number one, it employs people, right? It's not Amazon. You actually have to go somewhere, and the people there get relatively good benefits and pretty decent salary. I like to support that, number one. Number two, I get a rebate if I shop there. Number three, there are products that I actually, really like. Like I was there yesterday, and I found these, they're like wraps that are made out of egg, right? They're totally paleo, gluten. I scored those. It was cool. So I like going there. I get my cherry Bundy cherry juice at a really affordable price. I get that there. So I like Costco. Now, there's stuff about Costco I don't like. They're pushing vaccinations now. Not cool. They got rid of Roundup. Cool. So they're an institution that has some good things and some not so good things, right? All right. But I feel like now Costco is becoming like this kind of, like, it's become a cultural experiment in some ways. Like you could go to Costco and everything would be in the same place for a long time. Like, it would be this, and the sun would be this, and in the center of the store, unless it was seasonal, and the seasonal would bring new products. That's changed. That's totally changed. Every time I go to Costco now, something's different. And I'm thinking to myself, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? Why are they rearranging everything? It feels like Costco's become this version of Dark City in some ways. And now I've got to reorient myself. Oh, I got to go over here. Now, what happened to this? I mean, it's weird. It's totally weird. We, as humans, we are not unlike hunter and gatherers. Went back a long time ago, we would go to a place where we knew a certain, type of game would show up, and we'd crouch down in a bush because we knew it was coming. And sure enough, the herd would come through, and we'd throw the spears and shoot the arrows, and we'd go get that thing, right? Or if it was fish we were after, we'd go to a certain area where we knew that there was like a school of fish, right? Consistency. If there was like a root field, we knew where that root field was, the timing was, and if the conditions were consistent, we'd go there and pull that stuff out of the ground. We like that. It's part of who we are. When Costco does it, it fucks with our predatory instincts, right? I mean, it's kind of bizarre in some ways to think of Costco as kind of a predator. But we're the modern hunter-gatherers. I'm hunting like already killed meats. I'm grabbing already pulled roots. But when they pull it and they mess around with it, it disorients you. Anyway, it's just I feel like there's a social experiment going on with Costco right now. Anyway, it's the low side. Let's get into some of these earthquakes. Uranus and Taurus has not failed to disappoint. I'm going to go over a few of these. I'm at the USGS map right now. I'm going to put this link into both chats so that you guys, let me see if I can make sure I can paste this sucker in there. Let's see, we got that. Okay, you can go there in the chat. Hold on, let's pull this up here. Okay, why isn't this coming up? Paste. Let me do this. I'm going to try and do a tiny URL. Because this is a massive freaking link. Hold on. Let me see if I can do this. Give me one sec, ladies and gents. Huge link. Massive linkage. All right, let me do a tiny URL and fire this up. That way it might show up easier. The USGS is way too generous with all of its code. Paste it in. Bada boom. Bada boom, bada bing. Okay, here's the tiny URL. Throw this in there. Remember the days using tiny URLs on Twitter? I do. That's kind of obsolete. All right, let me get back into 15 minutes. Throw this in there. See what happens. Paste that. Let's see what we got. Yep, there it is. You can click on that. I'll go over to the chat room here. Let's see. Ian says, the new high, plugging your conscious into AI, virtual reality, perfect life, and hold that. Yep, absolutely. We're living in the virtual city. Okay, there we go. Mexicans are smiling families for the most part. I would agree with you. I have a very I grew up around Mexican families in California. There's a lot of Mexican families here in Texas. It's a group of people I really like. On the other side, if someone had, okay, so I'm going to figure out on the other side what's going on there. Okay, so you can't get that link there. I'm going to put it in the public comment for whatever reason. It's not showing up. Okay, so there it is over there. If you look over in the comments section, I've got the link to the tiny URL. You can get in there on both sides. So I'm going to get into this. Now, this is just Alaska has been having a number of earthquakes. Okay, so this is in last updated. So we've got some earthquakes happening all around the world, 2.5 and higher. So we've had some earthquakes in Florida. This is just today. I'm going to give you, this is just today. In Trinidad, just southwest of Trinidad, Colorado, a 3.2. There's a 2.9 in Millville, California, 2.5 Kobuk, Alaska. There's a 4.9, and that's in Revisionist Ridge, which is part of the Ring of Fire. It's just, if you look at Alaska, there's like this this wedge, this very thin wedge that comes out. It's like a series of like archipelagos. So that's part of the ridge. What else? Oh, we got more. Hold on. Let me get back here. Give me 1 sec. Just recently, within the last few minutes, we had earthquakes in Chile of 4.1, of 5.2 in Indonesia, and then different areas of Indonesia, Oneng Gangjang, and then northwest of Samilaki, there's a 4.9. So there's some earthquakes now that are swarming as we speak. Let's see what else. We had a 2.8 in Big Lake, Alaska, 2.9. Anchor. There was a 5.4 north of Iwo Jima. A 5.1 southwest of Mauricio Village in Guam. Things are heating up here. 2.6 in Puerto Rico. 2.7 northwest of Valdez. 2.8 west-northwest of the Geysers in California. There's another one in Japan. Japan's got some action. 4.6 Iwaki, 2.7 Coho, Alaska, 2.8 San Antonio, Puerto Rico, 5.0 Western Indian Ridge, Antarctic Ridge, another 4.9 in Kihiko-cho, Japan, a 5.2 Tanga Volcano, Alaska. We had a 2.8 in Kansas, west-southwest of South Hutchinson, Kansas. 3.4 in Yakataga, a 4.6 in Fiji. You know, when you get up to 4s, these are not insignificant quakes, by the way. 2.9 in Arecibo, 4.7 in Chile, again on the Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire is heating up. 2.5 Kaktovik, Alaska, a 4.4 west of Tual, Indonesia, 5.1 Southwest Indian Ridge. So things are heating up. We had a 4.5 east of Port Blair, India. More Alaskan swarms. And this is all just today. We had a 5.9 in that Revisionist Ridge. Keep your eye on that ridge. And then a 5.1 east of Iwaki, Japan. 5.0 in Papua New Guinea. Wow, holy smokes. There is major action going on seismically. Today is the anniversary of, guess what? Yes, Fukushima, 3/11/2011. When Fukushima was devastated, the Daiichi nuclear power plant in Japan was wiped out. Now, there are differing thoughts about that and what took place. Some believe that it was a nuclear explosion right there at that ridge, which is that ridge that drops off, that trench, just before you hit the coast outside of Fukushima. Some people believe that there was a bomb that was exploded there. Okay, I don't really have a problem with that per se. But we do know that it was a massive earthquake, and the aftershocks of that continued to reverberate and hit places like Japan, like Tokyo. You actually saw like massive cracks in the earth during that event. And I remember quite distinctly about a week and a half after that happened, maybe even been closer. We had this rainstorm from hell in California. It was weird. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was big, fat, huge, like, globules of water. But then it turned and it became hail-like. We rarely get hail in California, but it was pretty significant. It was the weirdest storm I ever experienced, and to this day I'm convinced that that was the front. That's how long it took. Whatever happened in Fukushima, which is still happening in Fukushima, by the way, they haven't really done much. That plant cooling down now is going to take what? Another 500 years or something like that. And oh, by the way, they're having the Olympics in Tokyo in 2020. Yoichi Shimatsu does a lot of stuff on that, if you want to read up on him and the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. But Uranus and Taurus it's back, right? It's on schedule. That's what's happening. Keep your eye on these swarms. Keep your eye specifically today on what's happening in the Ring of Fire in the Pacific. Powerful, powerful stuff here, and powerful time we're living in. It's a time of both physical and seismic quakes and culture quakes as well. Expect change over the course of the next 7 years. Significant change in ways that we haven't seen. Disruption from the Earth perspective, economic disruption, social disruption with just about everything. It's coming to a theater near you. Now, what can you do about it? Well, first of all, I would say probably be as clear and lucid as possible so you can deal with the changes. Get rid of the distractions, right? Get rid of distractions. Get rid of dependencies. This is a time to shed distractions, shed dependencies, let go of your baggage. You got to be super clear right now. Super, super clear. That's number one. Number two, I think you're going to see an exodus out of cities and into more rural areas. Perhaps this is why we're seeing stuff like, homestead rescue and some of the other stuff that I like. Perhaps this is another part of the programming, right? If it is, I would say that there may be two forces that are kind of these counterbalancing forces. One force says go to the city, city as the new Never Land amusement park, get out of the city and create your own reality. Are they both aspects of social engineering? Quite possibly. But what other options do we have, right? What other options do we have? Anyway. Eyelids taken off. Let's see. Let's see. Been watching Dutch Since lately. Dutch Since is a weird guy, I just have to say. Every now and then, Dutch Since will say, "My family's being threatened. I have to stop doing this. I've been having contact with the Illuminati," and then he continues to do it. I'm not saying that his work isn't any good. I just think it's a little weird. He's got a lot of